Hello, my name is Denisse Puebla, and I'm going to talk about lead poisoning in Zamfara, Nigeria. The table of contents. I'm going to talk about objectives, background of lead contamination, consequences, timeline of events, exposure pathways, solutions, summary, and we will show you my references. Also, I address the graphic and table on content that I will talk about in this presentation. What are our objectives? Understand the lead contamination in Zamfara, Nigeria. Recognize the health consequences for those exposed to lead in this community. Discuss implications of exposures to widespread level contamination in Zamfara. Target solutions that the community should acquire. And summarize the situation for the Zamfara community. Background. Zamfara is situated on the west coast of Africa, bordered to the west by Benin, to the north by Niger, to the east by Chad and Cameroon, and to the side by the Gulf of Guinea of the Atlantic Ocean. It is the Africa's most populous country. Zamfara State is located in northwestern Nigeria and has an estimated population of 3.6 million people, and approximately 20% are children under 5 years of age. Zamfara is a mineral-rich state with significant deposits of gold. The acute lead poisoning in Zamfara is a result of artisanal gold mining, small-scale mining done with rudimentary tools. Miners crush and grind ore to extract gold and in process release dust that is high contaminated with lead. Children in affected areas are exposed to this dust when they are laboring in the processing site, when their relatives return home covered with dust on their clothes and hands, and when the processing occurs in their home. Children are also exposed to this highly toxic lead in contaminated water and food sources. Next, I will show you a short video of how the lead contamination is in this community.
People brought mining activities to the villages where they transformed villages as processing sites, and then they contaminated the environment on those villages for many years, and then at the end children got poisoned and then start dying.
But what are the consequences of lead poisoning? Lead poisoning is most common caused by ingestion and inhalation of lead and lead compounds. Lead causes damage to multiple body systems, and the nervous system is particularly vulnerable, especially in young children, as you saw in watching the video. Chronic lead poisoning occurs when small amounts of lead are taken in over a longer period of time. The CDC defines childhood lead poisoning as a whole blood lead concentration equal to or greater than 10 micrograms per deciliter. Children constitute the vast majority of such cases. Symptoms can include severe abdominal pain, diarrhea, nausea, and vomiting, weakness of the limbs, seizures, and coma. Also, it's associated with developmental problems including impaired cognitive function, reduced intelligence, impaired hearing, and reduced stature. The timeline of the events. In March 2010, an unusually high number of deaths, primarily among children under 5 years old, were found in Zamfara state. Further study of blood samples taken by the same state revealed that the increased mortality was the result of acute lead poisoning, determined to be caused by massive environmental contamination from artisanal mining and processing of gold found in lead rich ore. The grinding of the ore into fine particles resulted in extensive dispersal of lead dust in villages concerned, including within family compounds. Ingestion and inhalation of the fine lead particles was determined to be the major reason for high lead levels in victims' bodies. Following the identification of the mass acute lead poisoning situation in Zamfara, an immediate two-pronged response approach was developed, consisting of a medical component and environmental component. The exposure pathways. We can have incidental ingestion of soil and dust due to ore processing. In this graphic, I want to show you the ore processing in a study that Lowe et al. Made, a research from October to November 2010, where 77% of 70 villages reported participation in any gold ore processing activity during the previous 12 months and thus were classified as ore processing villages. The most common gold ore processing activities were breaking rocks with 68.57%, washing with 70%, and drying with 68.57%. Another exposure pathway could be the consumption of food contaminated by soil and dust sources, ingestion of contaminated water. In this graphic, I show you the sources of drinking water that this community has, and they use any piped water. 249 said yes, any well water. 200 also they say yes, and also 213 persons use any rainwater. On the next table, um, a study make a comparison between the characteristics of ore processing villages and non-ore processing villages. As you see in this table, um, the contamination were widely distributed in three local government areas. Ore processing villages were more likely than other villages to report that children under 5 years old had convulsions during previous 12 months, and that children have died of following convulsions. The ore processing villages also were more likely to have children with blood levels more than 10 micrograms per deciliter and children with blood levels more than 45 micrograms per deciliter. This was were identified in ore processing villages only. It means like 8 of 54 villages um, has were processing ore. Half of the ore processing villages also have soil and dust sample with lead level with more than 400 parts per million compared to none of other villages. 20 ore processing villages have more than one soil dust sample with lead level more than 1,000 parts per meter. But what are the solutions? Uh, all processing activity should be prohibited inside villages and moved to secure locations that are inaccessible to children. Minors and persons who process ore should be educated regarding occupational precautions and protective measurements to reduce the risk of harmful exposure for themselves and their families. Minors should change their clothes and shoes when entering and leaving worksites to reduce the likelihood of carrying lead contaminated dust home. Gold ore processing activities within villages should be monitored and prohibited to prevent further contamination. Radio programs and community gatherings should be used to educate villagers about the health effects of lead, sources of lead, and ways to reduce lead exposure in their homes, villages, and worksites. Both ore processing villages are unknown ore processing villages should receive these messages given to rapid proliferation goal of gold ore processes in this region. Medical treatment led by the WHO includes use of chelating agents to reduce blood lead levels. In this graphic, I show the blood lead concentration in children after chelating therapy started in Zamfara, Nigeria. In 2010, they got 43% of children that has blood lead concentration in their blood. After chelation therapy in 2011, they reduced to 31%, and in 2015, they reduced to 1% of children that still got blood lead level concentration in their blood. A summary: acute widespread lead poisoning took place in Zamfara, Nigeria in 2010. Over 735 children were reported dead and thousands sickened by the neurotoxin. The source was traced to artisanal gold mining and ore processing in the villages. An immediate medical response protocol was developed to provide oral chelation therapy to vulnerable population. In order not to compromise the efficacy of the chelation therapy, immediate remediation of the affected villages was carried out, as I show you on the results. An over 95% reduction in soil lead levels was reported immediately after the remediation exercise. Here are references in APA form. Thank you very much for your attention.